Hello. So today we are doing interview questions based on data structures and analysis. And today's question is product of an array except self. So before I start this, I would like to tell you that if you want a Hindi version of this video, it is linked in a description. If you want to read about the code which I am writing here in Hindi, English, or Hinglish, which is a Hindi written in an English form, the link will be in the description. So let's go ahead and let's understand the question and then we will solve it. So the product of a self is a very popular question because it tests your logic. So what is obviously every question of DSA test your logic, but it is slightly different. So what this question asks you to do is let me just so what this question asks you to do is first we will check whether we what's the structure of the function. So the structure of the function is we have to return a vector. So our output will be something like this. In our output we'll have to return a vector. Okay. Then what we are what we are using. We are using a vector of name nums which is of type integer. So as you can see here in an example, it is a num vector which is given to us, has a integers stored in them, and there is some output as a vector. So what this question asks you to do is this question states that you have to go through all the elements. Let's say if the pointer is here on the first index and the element is 1, so you have to exclude this and you have to multiply 2 with 3 and then it will give you 6. Then you have to multiply 6 with 4, which is what? 6 4s are 24. So you have to store this 24 here. Then you have to move uh, this pointer ahead, the pointer which then the pointer will come here, and then you have to exclude this element and you have to multiply 1 with 3, then 3 with 4, because 1 into 3 is 3 and 3 into 4 is 12. So this is what this question states. So how we will do this question is the real key of this. So we know we need something to multiply. First, we know that we have to return a vector output. So we will say, okay, we have to first create a vector of type integer, which is output. So we have to initialize. Okay, just a second. So we have to initialize output vector. So we will do this. Then we have to have something to multiply, because if we are at first index and we are excluding this index, then we can't start, because we are excluding this index. We have nothing to multiply with, like we have nothing to multiply with here because we are excluding this. So we need something to multiply. So we can say, okay, the vector output first index. So the output vector's first index, which is 0th index, let's say it is 1. We will do that. Then what we have to do, we have to multiply it by for loop. Then the what this will do, this will set a first index of a vector to 1. This is an output. This will do this. And what we have to do is we have to then store this output into, like, the value of the outputs which we will get by using some logic, which is we have to store output I. And what we can say ki we have to go through the 0th index, then first index, then second index, then third index of an output, and so on. So we can say output I index. We can say, okay, take the output of an I index and minus it 1, minus 1 to it. So at ith index, at first index of an output, The I value is 1. So 1 minus 1 is 0. So this will give you the output at 0th index, the pointer at 0th index. And then we can multiply the num which we have here, num within with this value, so which is n I minus 1. So it is I minus 1. So we have to multiply this to this to get this. So let's do this. So we need an output first. We have to create an output vector. Let's create an output vector first. So let's create an output vector first. So the initiate output vector, I will say vector vec vector dot int output, and I will give a output of a size n. So here I'm giving output a size of n. Then we will go ahead and say, okay, we have to create something to multiply with. So I will say output at 0th index, value at output at 0th index is 1. Okay, we got this. Then we can say, okay, now I have to go through all the loops. We have to run a loop so that we can get a value. So let me show you here. So we have to run a loop like from here to here. So we will run a loop. So we will say start from first index because we have to exclude the 0th index of this. So we will start our loop from here. Just a sec. Okay. This is kind of, so we will start from here. We will start our loop from here. And then we will go here and then we will go here. So we will say, okay, for int I at 1, I is less than n because the size of an array, and then I will say I plus plus. And what we have to do is we have to in the loop which we have to store a value into output index. So we have to store value which we get in our vector output, and the value, how we will get a value, we will get a value by saying output minus the value of I minus 1. So the value of I at one index, so as you can say, the value of I at first index, value of I at first index is 2, 2 minus 1 is 1. So this will give you us that, and we will say because we are starting from first index, so we have to minus 1 from nums also, because we have to account for the change which we have done for our output to store a value in an output. So I minus 1. So what it is doing, it is taking an it will store an output at ith index, and it will take a value of I minus 1 index, and it will take a value from num I minus 1 index, and it will multiply it, and then it will store it into output ith index, which is in our case, for first loop it will be 0th index, then it would be like first, second, third, and so on. So this will give us our value, but to check whether the values are correct or not, we have to run one pointer from right also, because that will check, okay, values are right or not. So we will run a pointer from here also, from here, to check for a value. So we will say, okay, we have to multiply something to get something. So we will say, okay, int, let me just I will say int right because it is of type integer and it has right because I'm taking one because if we multiply 0 with something it will nullify that thing, so it will give us 0, but I am taking 1 so that I can multiply this one with our value to check for the uh, answers, and then so we will run a loop from right and it will say int I. So from our right, we will go towards left. So I will be n minus 1 because we are starting from last position, and then I should be greater than is equals to 0. And if you're thinking why I'm taking I n minus 1, because as you can see here, I am also taking excluding the left first index. So we are multiplying and checking for the value at both sides. So we are excluding this and I'm starting from here. I will exclude this from right and I will start from here. So as you can see, if we exclude this and we will say 3 into 6, 6 into 1, it will give the position, the rightmost element, which is 6. Then for second loop, at right, I will exclude 3. So it will give 4 into 2, 8. 8 into 1 is 8. So we are checking from both sides, and same I'm doing for left and I'm doing for right and storing the value. So right loop will go from I is equals to n minus 1 and I is greater than or is equals to 0, and then I minus minus because it is coming from higher to lower. So then what's the logic here? So I will say output I because we have to store into output I into, like, why into? Because as you can see our output at ith index, like at first index is 1, then what this will give us if we into 1 into 1, it will give us 1 which we can multiply to get our response, the answer. So output I into and equal to 1. So what I have done is I have multiplied output at position I, the element at position I with our right, which will give us 1, and then I will multiply that right, which is 1, into our what we are getting from our loop. So it will be num I. So for to to go from left to right, we have to multiply. We have to initially say our position at zeroth index is 1, and we will say okay, at zeroth index our position, our element is 1. Then at certain point our output I minus 1, which is um, I is our 1 for initial run of this loop. So I minus 1, the element at I is this. So I minus 1, the index of I, which is 1 minus 1. So 1 minus 1 is 0. So output at 0th index. So this will give us output 0th index. So what it is essentially doing, it is saying this will give us output 0th index, the value at which is 1, multiply with n nums I minus 1. So what this will do, this will say okay, multiply nums I minus 1, the initial I is at 1, I minus 1 is 1 minus 1, which is will give us 0, and the element at zeroth index of num is what, 1. So it is multiplying 1 into 1, right? Then for another loop it will go through and then it will multiply into this, and for right it is saying output at I will be multiplied by right, which will give us that same element which is present at an index I, and then we have to multiply that element with our element which is present after that. So this is what. it is happening. And then we have to return a vector, so we have to return an output after that. So I will return an output. So all we have to do is, we have done for this, we have done this, so we will come out of this loop, and I will just say return output. So let's run it and let's check. So there is some problem. What is? So parentheses were okay. There is some problem with my initialized. Let me do this. And let's run, because I have initialized the vector. And okay, I have not given one thing which is important. So I have to specify the size of this output, but how it will know that n is of what length? So I will say n is equals to nums dot size, because it will give a size of this and it will store the value of size of this in n. And then I can say, okay, output is equals to, and now the output will be as uh, as same size as nums. So now I can run. See, all it is cases has been passed. So what I'm doing for left and what I'm doing for right, let me again iterate you through this code, and let me tell you what's going on. So for output, I'm saying the element at first index of an output is 1. Then I will run a loop from first index, and I will say multiply that first index, for the first index element of num, right, with our output by subtracting 1 1. So if I say our num uh, the I is 1 and I will minus 1, then what it is essentially saying, it is saying output 0 multiply by num I is 1, I minus 1 is 0. So multiply output 0 into num 0. The element of output 0 will be multiplied with the element of num 0 for left side. And for the right side, I will go ahead and say I have created a variable of right which is 1. Then I will say okay, multiply right with the element which is present, so it will give a same element which we have uh, from here. And then we will say okay, multiply it by the element next to it, so it will give the product of that element. So this is what it is uh, doing essentially. So if you want to read about this code in English, Hindi or English, the link is in the description. And if you want to watch this video in Hindi, that link is also in the description. I will see you in the next video.